Yasodanandana Vrajajanarandana Jamunatira Vanachari Jamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, 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 Hare Hare. Shri Shri Radha Nilamanava ki jai, Shri Shri Radha Giridhari ji ki jai, Shri Shri Giridhari Govardhana ki, Shri Shri Gaunitaya ki, Gaura Pramanande. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Lotus Feet of Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Yeah. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 11, Chapter number 3, Text number 2. But, before we start, I'd like to say a few words. Today they're celebrating Lokanath Maharaj's Vyasa Puja, so there'll be very nice prasadam tonight at the Sunday feast, and probably maybe at lunchtime, maybe even breakfast time, don't even know. However, he was one of the great Sankirtan, is still one of the great Sankirtan leaders of our movement. He started off at one point in 1982 or 3 to walk all the way from in Gujarat, I think it was, huh? Gujarat or Bombay? He started in Dwarka, right? Yeah, all right, Gujarat. On the ocean there, went all the way down to Kanyakumari, the very southern tip of India, and then back up to Mayapur in time for Srila Prabhupada's centennial celebration, which, by the way, we're at 125 years now, and those of you who can get the information and your money over to India soon enough, the government of India is actually producing a coin, commemorative coin. Why? Really? Okay. And if everybody gets COVID, it's not my fault, right? I'm just saying. That's why I wear a mask, for other people's benefit, not mine. Okay, well, can somebody give me a wipe that they can wash off the microphone? So that after I'm speaking, at least it'll be clean. I won't feel guilty. Anyway, John, good luck. Pray to Krishna. So Lokanath Maharaj is an amazing devotee. He's always been completely simple. He comes from Gujarat. His name was Raghunanda Patel. And comes from a small village. And we know India is the place of Krishna. This is actually going to be the topic of our discussion today. And his sister, I think, tried to contact him and tell him, look, if you don't come back home, I'm going to kill myself. So even in India, in this modern age of Kali Yuga, so much opposition to becoming Krishna conscious. Not because of this movement or that one or this one or that one. People should simply work and do and provide for their family, and so many other things that come into the picture. So he had great opposition from his family and the community there, a very small village. And he's built a beautiful temple there, which has become the center of the village these days. But for many years, so much opposition. Go figure. I mean, it happens here in America. You want to join the Catholic Church and be a priest or a nun, your parents will do everything they can to talk you out of it. Oh, do that when you're old. If you don't practice Krishna consciousness like Prahlad Maharaj from young child, then you don't get there in this lifetime most times. We always can think and produce what we agree to is our own Krishna consciousness, which is sufficient. Well, that's not what the scriptures say, and that's part of what we're going to hear about today. All right? So, anyway, there's many more stories and activities of Lokanath Maharaj. You can check with Manini and some other devotees who are closer to him. I don't have enough correct information. I just know I've never been in a kirtan that didn't just take me right up to the spiritual world. It was led by Lokanath Maharaj. We were one time, they were doing some kirtan in the temple room at night in Mayapur. And a lot of devotees there. They were probably, this is before the Gaurnitai temple was built. And the kirtan just kept picking up pace, more and more and more. And then outside of the kirtan, very, very edge, the devotees were standing up so they could see Lokanath Maharaj leading it and all. And then I was with one of my godbrothers from Australia. And all around the edge of the kirtan, all the devotees, all the way around that, just maybe one devotee's depth, they were dancing. Everybody else, all the way in towards the center of the kirtan, were sitting down. The devotee looked at him and he said, "Look, it's Lord Chaitanya's lunatic fringe." And as soon as he said that, the entire kirtan hall filled up with devotees jumping and dancing. And for the next 30 minutes, everybody forgot where they were. But they knew it was the right place to be. Because this is actually what we should do. When there's a kirtan, we should want to jump and dance and sing the praises of Lord Chaitanya, Lord Nityananda, the Panchatattva, Krishna and Radha, everybody out there, all the incarnations. We produce kirtan to please the deities in the temple room. And they like to see the devotees dancing. So kirtan should always bring up that, and all you have to do is be Lokanath Maharaj, and you won't have any problem. Every time it happens. He's so deep when he chants. It's just incredible. Absolutely incredible. But anyway, we can aspire for that by reading and adhering to the tenets of Srimad Bhagavatam. So text 2. Nanit piye jisan yusmad vacho hari katamritam samsarata panistapto marchastatapa vesadam. Please chant. Keep going. Matis. Some of our leaders. Na anutriptyang. I am not yet satiated. Jusan. Engaging. Yusmat. Your. Vachaha. In the words. Harikatha. Of the topics of the Supreme Lord. Hari. Amritam, the nectar. Samsara, of material existence. Tapa, by the misery. Nishtapa, tormented. Maritya, a mortal human being. Tatapta, of that pain. Besajam, the medical treatment. Translation and purport by the disciples of Srila Prabhupada. Although I am drinking the nectar of your statements about the glories of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, my thirst is not yet satiated. Such nectarian descriptions of the Lord and His devotees are the actual medicine for conditioned souls like me, who are tormented by the threefold miseries of material existence. Please repeat. Although I am drinking the nectar of your statements about the glories of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, my thirst is not yet satiated. Such nectarian descriptions of the Lord and His devotees are the actual medicine for conditioned souls like me, who are tormented by the threefold miseries of material existence. Raise in hands if you are experiencing the torments of material life. 1, 2, 3. Got a couple of double-handers. I can't lift my other arm. So right. Well, actually, not very many people are particularly convinced that they're tormented by material miseries. Anybody been out in the yard in the evening lately? There are plenty of mosquitoes everywhere in this city to just chew you to pieces. So if that's not misery, I don't know what is. What to speak of how focused are our minds? Anybody have to slam on their brakes this week because you weren't paying attention to the car in front of you? Driving around? Anybody? Come on, be honest. I drive in this city for 40 years. Every day it's an event. Right? Misery. We saw one little news report that a 50-lane road, 50 in China last week was bumper to bumper. 50 lanes. 50 lanes. That's twice as much as they have out in Katy at the intersection of I-10 and 99 there. That's 26 lanes. 50 lanes of cars bumper to bumper. Misery. And all these people are out there doing is just trying to make a living, right? Like everybody else. Supposed to be a nice grihastas, buy your family, all that, right? 50 lanes of choked up traffic. Huh? And you know where they're going to be tomorrow and next week and this next week and next month? Same place. Same place. Coming in, going out. You think you're not suffering the misery of the material world, you're not being honest. According to the Bhagavatam. It's not me. Okay. Purport. According to Srila Sridhar Swami, one may argue that since the symptoms of a pure devotee of the Lord have already been elaborately described, that's what we did in the first 2 chapters, one can perfect his life by advancing to the platform mentioned in the previous verse. And there is no need for further questions. So the previous verse said, King Nimi said, now we wish to learn about the illusory potency of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Vishnu, which bewilders even great mystics. My lords, please speak to us about this subject. And yesterday we had a beautiful class by Saber Priya, all about the positions and the parts of the Sankhya Yoga and the material energy and how it's all working under the Supreme Lord, Sri Krishna. So therefore the material world itself cannot be separated from Krishna. Everything existent in the material and spiritual worlds are controlled by Krishna. You cannot escape Krishna under any circumstance except your choice to not remember Krishna. Okay? That sounds easy enough, right? Just remember Krishna all day. No problem. Even when you're in 50 lanes of traffic or 26 lanes of traffic. I used to work in Katy, you know. I've seen that thing. I've seen it. As soon as they finished it, all 26 lanes were choked up just like they were when there was only maybe 18. It didn't have an effect on the traffic flow at all. Nothing. That's the material world. Do what you can to solve a misery. Good luck. Anybody live out 290? Towards, what is it out there? Cyprus and that area? They've been constructing on it for how many years now? Enough that when they finished, it was already at capacity. So now you're going to build more lanes and choke it up with the construction until you reach the next capacity and then open it back up again. We are not going to solve the material conditions of material life by engaging in the material energy. It belongs to Krishna. During Kali Yuga, it's simply designed to give us trouble. Okay? Simple as that. So, if you want to be successful materially, that's what you have to do. Give it up. So, I'll read the purport. According to Srila Sridhar Swami, one may argue that since the symptoms of a pure devotee of the Lord have already been elaborately described, one can perfect his life by advancing to the platform mentioned in the previous verse, and there is no need for further questions. So now you should all be satisfied and go about your Krishna conscious business, and you'll be happy the rest of your life. Anybody willing to do that? Starting today. I'll give you an extra day. Start tomorrow. Anybody willing to do that? Just speak, remember, hear about, act on, chant about Krishna. You're willing to do it? Good. See, we got one person to follow here. She's going to deliver the whole city of Houston. It is feasible. It is feasible that one person can deliver the entire city of Houston by simply surrendering everything to the lotus feet of Krishna. Nothing is impossible with Krishna. Nothing. Even the impossible is possible. I'll speak on that later if you remind me. But, Hari Kirtanamritam, topics about the Lord and His devotees, are so pleasing and beautiful that one cannot give up hearing them, even after spiritual liberation. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in this connection has quoted the following verse. Atmaramas chamunayo nirgranta apyokrame karvante ahaitikam bhaktyam idham Bhuta Guno Hari. This is known as the Atmarama verse. Those who are self-satisfied, Atmarama, are unattracted by external material desires, are also attracted to the loving service of Sri Krishna, whose qualities are transcendental and whose activities are wonderful. Hari, the personality of Godhead, is called Krishna because he has such transcendently attractive features. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 7, verse number 10. Material medicine is not desirable once a disease has been cured. But on the absolute platform, the means and the end are non-different. So chanting and hearing the glories of Lord Krishna are both the means and the end of transcendental bliss. King Nimi said to the sages, "You are all great saintly persons, absorbed in love of Godhead. Therefore, although you will speak about Maya or illusion, the conclusion will undoubtedly be Krishna consciousness. Please don't think that you have already explained everything to me. The intoxicating nectar of your instructions has left me more eager than ever to hear about the Supreme Personality of Godhead." King Nimi was a great devotee of the Lord. Otherwise, there would have been no question of his personally conversing with such exalted living entities as the 9 Yogendras. But as a humble Vaishnava, he considered himself an ordinary conditioned soul, covered by material designations. Thus, he showed his eagerness to understand the actual nature of Maya in order to be safe from her future attempts to place him in the burning fire of material existence. Samsara daba nanarita loka tranaya karunya ganat ganatpam praptasya kalyuna gunarnavaisha vande garoshi charanara vendam. The key to the highway, folks, lies in the instructions of your spiritual master. We sit on this Vyasasan as a representative of Sri Vyasadeva, who is the entire universe's spiritual master, and that he presented this Srimad Bhagavatam as the ripened fruit of Vedic understanding. I don't know anything, but I do. My spiritual master told me this was the truth. That if we follow the instructions of the spiritual master, he becomes the boat with which to cross the ocean of material existence. And it blows across by the winds of the Vedic literatures. And ultimately, we have to learn the Maya Shakti, the material energy, to understand how the living entity is forever suffering within the material world. Until you elevate yourself to the spiritual platform of Krishna consciousness, you are still attached to something within this material world. It's not so easy to give up. There was one story between Akbar and Birbal, and you'll never trace out how many of those stories actually happened between Akbar and Birbal. The world is full of quotations attributed to people that look like they would have said that. Benjamin Franklin gets all sorts of props, and Aristotle gets all sorts of attributed to him. Akbar, Birbal, same thing. But one time Akbar said, just when do you give up this attraction for the material nature? And he says, you've got some time tomorrow morning? And he said, yes. He said, I'll take you somewhere to show you when you actually give up material attachments. But bring your daughter along. She's very young, and it's good she learns this too. So where did Birbal take Akbar that day, the next day? Bright and early in the morning. To a hospital, to visit an old friend. Not that they'd been friends for such a long time, but he was very, very old. And he's literally dying, sitting in the hospital. See, previously, and I don't want to offend any doctors, people only went to hospitals to die, because everything else they could possibly try to stay alive had already been tried. Right? Personal family history on this one. So they went, Akbar and his daughter followed Birbal to this hospital. And they went to this old friend lying on his deathbed. And Birbal comes in and announces, my dear Prabhu, Emperor Akbar has personally come to see you today. So Akbar walks in with his daughter. Now, what would you do if President Biden walked in here right now? What would happen in this temple room? Somebody has to say something. What would the basic congregation of devotees here right now, if the President of the United States walked into this temple room to get the blessings of Radha Nila Madhava, what would happen here? Somebody say it. I mean, I'm not going to go on any further. I keep repeating this statement for the rest of my life, which may not be as long as I would hope.
You say something.
Get some tomatoes and rotten cabbage.
Everybody would stop whatever we were doing, stand up, and welcome the President of the United States into our temple room, hoping that the mercy of Radharani Lamadava could help the poor soul. Because he's suffering, but he knows he knows the secret of how to get out of our suffering. But every single person in the presence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and his associates, right here on the altar, would have their full attention focused on a material person who is simply a politician and nothing else. We'd all stop everything we're doing to see that the President was comfortable. That means we're not so Krishna conscious. Real Krishna conscious, everybody would still just keep speaking the Bhagavatam, hearing the Bhagavatam, chanting about Krishna's glories. And he would just come and do whatever prayers he was, and then he'd leave. We wouldn't even pay attention to him. Not going to happen. So anyway, this old man lying on his deathbed in the presence of the emperor of the entire Mughal Empire was looking at his daughter the whole time. And when they walked out of their room, Akbar said to Birbal, never. I get this. Never. Because unless we absorb ourselves in Krishna, we're not going to get free of the material energy. And we don't even know how influenced we are by the material energy unless we know about it. What's the great political slogan? Know your enemies. Another nice one is, Keep your friends, but keep your enemies closer. So you can always know what they're up to. So until we become convinced that Krishna is actually in charge of the material energy, and therefore he will protect us from the material energy, because it's his. All living beings are his. Bijam, Pita, Bhavam. Krishna is the seed-giving father to all living entities. He personally decides where every single soul goes. And that's as close as Krishna ever gets to actually working. Everything is maintained simply by his glance. The entire material energy, as Mataji said yesterday, was started by the time factor, correct? In what form does the time factor come? Huh? Death? Well, that is part of it. But no, it actually comes with the glance of Vishnu. That sets the material energy into operating, because time affects everything we do in this material world. And who does Krishna say he is? Time. Kala Chakra. Time. Everything is agitated by time in this material world. Whereas in the spiritual world, it is described by Srila Prabhupada in Bhaktisiddhanta that time is present only by it's conspicuous by its absence. You don't notice time except that you don't notice it. Now what does that mean? How can you not notice time passing by? We read the Bhagavatam. Krishna is doing this part of the day. Krishna is doing that at another part of the day. Time is passing. Time does exist. But what's the difference in the spiritual world, how time functions and fluctuates, as in the material world? Microphone. Hey, Vishal.
Time isn't in control of the situation. It's not dragging people along or pushing them along. But
in the spiritual world, what is the effect of time? It has to be. It has to be there.
It works to carry the pastimes out and allow things to happen in a way that's most pleasing to Krishna.
Well, how is it conspicuous by its absence?
I don't know.
Can't hear you. Mataji, say. Give her the microphone, please.
Everything there is eternal. It's not temporary.
Yes. But time is something that is ever present, even though it's progressing constantly. So how does it become absent? Is that when you're Krishna conscious, you're simply in the presence. When you're in the presence of Krishna, you can be there and enjoy an entire meal with Krishna, and you're only focused on each bite of prasadam, and how knowing that's non-different from Krishna. See? You're so focused on Krishna and being Krishna conscious, effortlessly, because Krishna is there with you, that it seems as if time doesn't pass, even though you can go home at night to your family and tell them what Krishna did all day. So things are happening, but you're only there in the presence. And every moment seems like eternity. The opposite is also there. Every moment of separation from Krishna feels like an age. Yugaitam nimischena. The seventh verse. Every moment feels like 12 years or more when I'm not with Krishna, or I'm not Krishna conscious. And this is Lord Chaitanya. He is Krishna. He is never not Krishna. He is Krishna. Right? This is how different the material and spiritual perspectives are. And of course, we've got this dilemma that we're in Kali Yuga, where Krishna says, Manda samanya matiyo manja bhagya daradi. Right? That we have small minds, they're agitated. We have weak bodies. And we have no memory, practically. I was reading the pastime last Saturday night. I do a Chaitanya Charitam reading on Saturday evenings at 6 o'clock on Zoom. And Lord Chaitanya, by the tricks of the Pandits of Navadvip, it was arranged that this great famous Kashmiri Brahmana, Keshava Kashmiri, would come and meet him first. They kind of set it up like that. So that in the event Lord Chaitanya doesn't defeat him or surpass him in intelligence, then somebody else could deal with that later. And you say, oh, well, it's okay, he's just a boy. Because he was teaching grammar. He was like 15 years old. He had a grammar school, Sanskrit grammar. Srila Prabhupada says it takes 12 years to become expert at just one of the grammatical structures in Sanskrit. 12 years. Now Lord Chaitanya is 15. Because immediately after that it starts talking about his youth pastimes from 15, 16. So he's 15 years old and he's already a Sanskrit scholar. He is Krishna himself. Therefore everything came from him. He is the Vedas. Right? So what amazed this Pandit was Lord Chaitanya was received him, and he was there teaching his class in the afternoon. And he received the Pandit, and he said, we've heard so much about you. And here we are sitting on the bank of the Ganges. Could you please recite some poetry about the Ganges? And he said, all right. And he immediately spoke. This is, stream of consciousness, thing where 100 verses in glorification of the Mother Ganges, composed on the spot. And they were beautiful, unlike anything anyone else had heard. But when he finished, Lord Chaitanya glorified him. And he said, this verse number 51 has 5 great embellishments and 5 faults. Could you please describe these embellishments and faults? And he was also careful to let the Pandit know that this is not a fault of the poetry. These are there for further understanding, so to speak. And the first thing the Pandit said was, how did you remember this much? Because Lord Chaitanya quoted the 51st verse back to him. He said, how could you possibly remember this random verse out of 100 verses and recite it verbatim? And he said, well, I'm a Shrutidar. Everything I hear I can remember and assimilate. Don't ever try to get one over on Krishna, the deities. Never. Don't go pray them for something you don't need. It won't work. You'll get it. It just won't work for you in the way you thought it would. So that night, the Pandit went to sleep. After just thinking in this again and again and again, thinking over how this could be. I'm not a Sanskrit expert, so I'm not discussing the various points and what they're called and all that. It's in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Adi Leela, chapter Gosh, don't even remember. I was reading it last night. Already I forgot which chapter it was. But it's towards the last third when Lord Chaitanya, just before he leaves his childhood and becomes an adult, a youth, but an adult. So he went home and just pondered this. He finally went to sleep. He didn't go home, but where he was staying. So he went to sleep. And Mother Saraswati, his worshipable deity, came to him and said, don't be so bewildered. Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, this Nimai Pandit, is in fact my master, Sri Krishna himself. And with that, the Pandit was appeased, and the next day he surrendered to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, a boy. Externally appearing as a boy, he surrendered. Who would do that here? If a 15-year-old boy preached to you about Krishna consciousness and completely defeated all of your arguments against that is the real business of human life, who would surrender to a 15-year-old boy who told you that? Anybody? Yeah. We're being honest today. No, none of us would. Trust me, I know how intimidating it is. I was 21 years old when I joined, and our whole congregation were, twice as old as me, pretty much. How old were you when we met that first time to do this wedding? And that was in, 1985. How old were you then? 35. So he's maybe 35 years old, just talking to this American boy who just came back from getting married on the other side of the planet because his spiritual master said, I want you to marry this girl. And he told that girl, I want you to marry this boy. We live on opposite ends of the planet. I had one devotee, Mataji, up in Dallas, one of the senior ladies that's up there. She's getting pretty old now. So I'm pretty old. She came up to me in the hallway 3 days before I left to go get married. And she said, I just want to ask you personally. You're flying halfway across the world to marry someone you haven't even met. And I said, yep. Okay, I just wanted to hear it from you. Who these days, and I'm not trying to glorify myself, I was a spaced out 21-year-old kid, 27-year-old kid at that time. Just because my spiritual master said, I want you to marry her, told her, I want you to marry him. This was the days before internet, before cell phones were ubiquitous. You had to write letters back and forth. You had to get permission to make a long-distance phone call to the other side of the earth, and it was expensive. That's the base level of surrender a person would have to take to get Krishna in his heart and not think of anything but Krishna ever again. Base level. Now, how many of you are willing to do that? How many are you, and there's some older folks here, how many of you got married to a girl out of state, say in India? How many men actually went all the way just because your father said, you should marry this one? Even Prabhupada said, my father, he married me to this girl, but I didn't like her. They got married, but he didn't like her. In fact, he started plotting, and this is in his script, things about Prabhupada, that he was plotting to get married to another girl already, and then he still wanted to marry that other girl years after he was married, so he was going to take a second wife. And his father said, don't do that. Can you imagine having a second wife in the family? She's going, sure move, and I'm going to do it. Is anybody here, any man here want to have two wives to tell them what to do? We're gone from the Vedic culture. Everybody is. Everybody is. We're gone. We no longer exist within the Vedic age. It's not here. We are simply in the age of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mercy. And it is only through that mercy that we're going to get out of this material energy that's trapped us so succinctly that we don't even know what's going on. Here in the Vedic times, King Nimi is asking about the material energy. Please tell me about Maya. Why? Because he's already heard about Krishna. He's already heard about the devotees of Krishna and what it means to be a devotee. From these 9 brothers of Vrishabdev who just go all through the universe together without a plane, just with their consciousness, and go and meet the different devotees around the universe and have discussions of Krishna. So King Nimi is now saying, well, tell me about the material energy, because if you know about the material energy, you will know that it is ruled by Krishna, and that it even is not separate from Krishna. Aham savasya mataya patam. Aham savasya. Anyway, it's verse 8 of chapter 10 of the Bhagavad Gita. The beginning of Aham savasya prabhavo matasavam pravartate iti matva natnimam kanamam prabharajate. Yeah, the everything spiritual material comes from Krishna. It's ruled by Krishna, and you can, in fact, elevate your consciousness to the level of seeing everything within this material world as Krishna. Where you look at a storm coming, it's Krishna. Even though you know you just left home with your family and your wife hung all the laundry out for the week. That's Krishna. Instead of, oh, now what? Dilemma. Should I turn around? That's my wife saying. Let me ask her whether she's willing to rewash this stuff and hang it back out tomorrow in hopes that it'll dry. This is Krishna. Everything is Krishna. So I have a question. How many of you have a set of Srila Prabhupada's books? Please raise your hand. Right? Have you read the book Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu? How many has read The Nectar of Devotion? Okay, you have. What does the Nectar of Devotion teach us? Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, ocean of nectar about Krishna and bhakti. So what does the Nectar of Devotion tell us about Krishna? Anyone? Come on now, I know some of you know some rudimentary Sanskrit also. Bhakti Ras Amrita Sindhu. The devotional bhakti, rasa, relationship, Amrita, which is nectarian, Sindhu, it is an entire ocean. I mean, if you think about it, they have different names of the oceans. They now just added the Southern Ocean as an ocean, even though they've been calling it that since time immemorial. So it's water that surrounds. It's one ocean, technically. They're dividing it up materially based on which countries it touches. There's an Indian Ocean, right? It goes all the way down to Australia. Did you know that? You had your own ocean. From all the way down the side, the eastern side of Africa, down to Australia, back up. Huh? All the way through, well, actually the western coast of South America and up to America itself. That's the Pacific Ocean, but there's no break in the water. It all touches itself. So what are we learning from this Nectar of Devotion? Somebody? Come on. Huh? Found it. Good. You almost missed me there. He said the various categories of the relationships with Krishna. Yeah. Bhakti Ras. Devotional mellows of the ocean of Krishna's relationships. And how much information does the Nectar Devotion give in discussions about Krishna? Anybody know? How much information is there in relation to Krishna? Where Krishna is, Krishna does, any of those things.
There's a lot. And it goes through all his qualities, the 64 qualities. And
yeah, the index is 20 pages on that. Okay, this book itself is, hold on. I like fun little things to make us realize just how far off the base we really are, how much is out there and what we're doing. So the concluding words are on page 401. So divide 20 into, divide 400 by 20, and you'll see what percentage of this book is just about Krishna and his relationship with anything and everything. What percentage is that? It should be right around 10, 15%. Yeah? Wouldn't that be? Divide 20 into 400. Nice thing, everybody carries a calculator and a dictionary and all of Prabhupada's books and whatever. Isn't that how you do percentages? You divide the big number by the small number? Right? What did you come up with? Huh? 20%? And probably not right, but anyway, something like that. Huh? So 5%. Right? That's right? So how much does it take us to get that 5% out of this book? How much effort? How much study does it take for us to get the other, let's say 95%? 90%? Just for these 20 pages. We have to read 90 times that to get that information that's on these 20 pages. There's no limit to how much we can know about Krishna. It's beyond calculation. Beyond calculation. And since we all have that book, how many have read it? Don't raise your hands. I don't want anybody to embarrass themselves. And how well do you know that? We have a relationship with Krishna. We have a book to study the relationship that everyone has with Krishna, and yet we don't know it. It hasn't quite been important enough for us to really dive deep into this and find out, how do we relate to Krishna? How does Krishna relate to us and everybody and the whole aham savasa prabhava matasaram vartati, the material energy and the spiritual energy? How big is our universe? How many universes are there? And Krishna is personally present in each and every one of them. Jai Shri Shri Radha Madhava. And yet, how much of our life has already passed that we haven't tried to learn this? That's a big one, right? How much have we missed the point of human life by not knowing this in full, to our greatest capacity? Which is why it's described that we take birth after birth. Again and again, unlimited times. And it's cool, because when all the universes are sucked back into the Mahavishnu, right, when he inhales, right? And the Lord is in Yoga Nidra, so everybody knows about yoga. When you're doing your Yoga Nidra, you're breathing in very slowly, but you breathe out even slower. just to get the universes back in place. And guess what? You will come back in that next breath of Mahavishnu with the same karmas that you had left over when the Lord withdrew the universes from the creation. You'll have the same exact karmic situation that you left with. And how long does it take for him to exhale completely? And then inhale completely? We can't calculate this. And our lives now in this Kali Yuga are how many years? Anybody can tell you exactly how many years we get? Who here plans on living to 100? According to the Bhagavatam, Kali Yuga, we are guaranteed 100 years. Should you live your life as a proper devotee and etc., not having and accruing any bad karma that would cause a deadly disease or an accident or whatever. So how many of us can say, I will live to 100 years, because I'm very Krishna conscious? And I know in my heart of hearts that Krishna is going to give me my full 100 years. Can anybody say that? Can anybody say you'll be at Bhagavatam class next Sunday, 7 days from now? Huh. We have no control of our own lifetime. And yet we think we control life as we know it. And we strive so diligently to maintain what we have in this material world. Don't we? And what wouldn't we do to give our children a better life than we felt we had? And we had a perfect life, right? An even more perfect life for our children. How hard have we strived towards that? And how's that's working out? How many people have grandkids here? Okay, now let's bear in mind that we spent most of our life making sure that our children were better than us. And now you've got grandkids, so how did that work out? How much better are they than you are? Situated economically, any other different kind of way you want to calculate, educationally, whatever, in the material world. Just how well did that work out? Are all of our children happy? Do they ever have any real distress in their life like we had, trying to work our way up through the material energy? And please don't make that the topic of discussion today. It's a waste of time. But we do everything that we can to accomplish that. Isn't it true? Right? That's our motivation, that our children, grandchildren get better and better, yeah? We do that. How is that going to get you out of the material world? Are you going to live so long to see all your generations become successful in material life just because that's what you gave them, that opportunity? Probably not. Anyway, sorry I went over. It's the weekend. Maybe Nina and Rita will almost forgive me. Anyone have any questions? I'll refer you back to the same verse we just read. And the Nectar Devotions. Please read this book. Nectar Devotion, Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. I don't know how many copies we have. You can check in our gift shop tonight. Come back, walk through there. Get this book if you don't already have it. And begin reading it. And believe it or not, the book breaks down to just 4 waves of the ocean of nectar. So you don't have to study the whole ocean, all the waves everywhere. Just 4 waves in the vast ocean. Our planet's mostly water. Read this book and you'll understand what you don't know about being Krishna conscious. That much at least you'll come away with. It's very beautiful, but we have to understand where is that. So I'll give one question. Oh no.
There was a class by Gurudev, the Balakrishna Goswami. He said that if you have no time to read Srimad Bhagavatam, you're living in hell. He said that. That's an audio.
Well, even if you have time to read Srimad Bhagavatam, you're still living in hell.
Isn't
But
it
at
true?
least you can escape it for the length of the Bhagavatam, which is, when Prabhupada first wrote it, would tab out to about 60 volumes of 400 each. That's how Prabhupada broke it down, and then we found a way to get thinner paper of good quality, and we have less volumes, but the same amount of chapters. How many chapters is the 10th canto? That's the canto that talks about Krishna. Huh? 90 chapters just about Krishna. And it took 9 cantos just to get to the point where you hopefully will understand the next 90 chapters. And now we're going back through the 11th canto, which deals with understanding where you should be at this point in your study of the Srimad Bhagavatam. What is a devotee? What does a devotee do? Can you actually take pleasure all day long just in Krishna Katamritam, Hari Katamritam? That's what the verse said. You can do that for how many days? The king is fully convinced about Krishna consciousness, but yet now he still said, well, let's keep going with this because it's so nectarian. Tell me about Maya in a Krishna conscious way. Tell me that. Will we still be so inquisitive after so many days of this? It's interesting, huh? Life is short. Time is permanent. Krishna and his associates track everything. Everything. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. So tomorrow should be verse number 3. For those that are lucky enough to have a taste to hear again and again and again about this Hari Katamritam. Right. So, was I too scary? I can twist your mind around all day long because there's so much of it. So much. 20 pages of Krishna here and something about Krishna. There's 20 pages. Index. 1 line. 2 lines max. 2 columns. What makes it so worthwhile is Nana Shastra Pitana, that Krishna, that the 6 Goswamis already learned. They're passing along the synopsis of this. The entire connected devotion is in the Rupa Siksha and the Sanatana Siksha. Look at that section where it talks about chanting chapter 18, verse 60. 160. Drinking and fixing. That's in Sanatana Siksha. Yeah. That's in Rupa Goswami. There's another some chapters after that teaches this Rupa will have to go to Vrindavan this way. And Sanatan came down this way to get to Lord Chaitanya. Lord Chaitanya was on his way to the south. Rupa met him in Prayag, going with Lord Chaitanya from there. Sanatan came a different path. He missed Lord Chaitanya because he got to Prayag. And it was a whole other path. Well, he missed Rupa. That the entire nectar devotion are in those 2 chapters. There's a book by Damodar Swami called Grades of Devotion. It's a breakdown of it. Yeah, and I'll get through all the Prabhupada discussions and start reading everybody else's.